Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of The Wicked Conservative. Today, I am going to actually bring you content, and I am going to also give you another teaser for the show. So, without further ado, let's jump into what I have on deck for you guys today. So, I had originally planned to talk to you guys about Kemp's executive order regarding the vaccine passports and how he made an executive order that we were not going to require vaccine passports. And I wanted to tell you why even an executive order that sounds like it's a good thing would be a bad thing, considering the executive order that was issued was a very meticulously crafted piece of, I can't even call it legislation, but a piece of doctrine, a piece of word to be enforced, if you will. It only pertained to certain industries, and I believe that it was very government related, and we were supposed to talk about why that was a bad thing and how that still put people in regular jobs at risk for being told that they were required to get this vaccine. And I wanted to do an entire show on it. But whenever I signed on today and I just happened to look at some of the trending news, the inflation became very apparent that they were, talking about inflation. And I came across this Washington Post article that I have here up on the screen in front of you guys. So we're going to go ahead through this and we're going to see what they have to say about the inflation prices rising 3.6%, reflecting an upward trend since April. So it's only been a year, and the prices are rising. And I know you guys are feeling it just by going into the grocery store. We just went to the grocery store, and I think I spent about, say, $80 more than what I usually spend, and I didn't get half of what I usually get. So let's go in and see what they say about this inflation and how we compare to last year. So it states in the article that the Bureau of Economic Analysis showed that prices rose 0.6% in the last month. So what they're saying is that if we go to the beginning of the article here, compared to April a year ago, the percent in prices has already increased by 3.6%. Now, when we compare just what the prices were a month ago compared to what they are this month, prices rose again 0.6% over a month-to-month jump. They're stating that, adjusting for inflation as the stimulus ran through the economy, that is the reason why consumer spending ended up falling. So, just a few things that I noticed in the first paragraph here of this article. We want to blame the consumer spending falling on the fact that the stimulus has ran through the economy, people spend it all at once. I'm assuming that's what this means. And it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the prices have gone up and people feel like they need to hold on to their money, maybe to pay bills or to pay some of their debts or anything like that. The only reason why consumer spending has fallen is because the stimulus ran through the economy and it's began to slow down. Okay. In the next paragraph here, it says that the latest inflation data is unlikely to rattle the Federal Reserve, which we all know that nothing rattles the Federal Reserve. So we weren't looking for anything to rattle the Federal Reserve. We should be the ones rattling the Federal Reserve, but I digress. Fed leaders have argued for months that a rise in inflation will be temporary, and then as soon as the economy reemerges from the pandemic, that will be okay. So rather than to rush the raise in interest rates and slow down the recovery by raising your interest rates and making it more expensive to borrow money, they're going to just wait until the labor has time to recover. So what's an easy way to put this? When we stimulated the economy, we decided to give people money in advance, stating that, you know what, because you can't work now, we're going to give you this money and we're going to expect you to work in the future, is pretty much all these stimulus did. So while there was no production because production was shut down in America, there was still spending. So we were still spending on the goods that were produced prior to everything being shut down. What does that do? When you're talking about an economic balance, you are now talking about stopping the production of goods and leaving a limited amount of product to be consumed by the same number of people. Let's face it. As much as people wanted to believe that 1 to 3% of the population was completely decimated by COVID, it wasn't. And we still have the same amount of people who are consuming goods and have needs to consume goods. The only problem is we don't have the goods for everybody to consume. Therefore, what is left on the market naturally has to be priced higher. There's a bigger need for the remaining products on the market, therefore they are priced higher. So as you can see in the chart, the personal consumption expenditures price index changed from a year earlier. So they have up on your screen, it's 2017, 18, 19, 2020, and 2021. As you can see, we've kind of been pretty consistent from 2017 all the way up until 2021, where personal consumption expenditures in April of 2020 went down. Now, like I said before, why did that go down? It went down because there wasn't any products to consume. We were only consuming products that were still on the market, an overage, if you will. Okay, so last April saw such a sharp drop that prices are still making up lost ground relative to the Fed's 2% target. So on the next two charts that you see here, hopefully you can see my little mouse going back and forth here. You have all items indexed February 2020, and then all items excluding food and energy. So this is basically what I was telling you before about the food and the energy. This is your typical bills that you're going to pay for your groceries and maintaining your lifestyle, as well as paying your bills. Probably gas consumption is on the energy list. And then you have all the other index items. So I'm going to say that that is probably the, tennis shoes, clothing, extracurricular items that you buy. And the trends are pretty consistent across the board until April 2020. And you can see that the excessive spending went way down. Even though that the spending on food and energy dipped a little bit, it didn't dip down as much as it did for the extracurricular spending. So what do these two charts mean in relation to what they're trying to say about why the market is changed? If we go back to this first paragraph up here, they told us that the prices were up, but the only reason that people weren't spending was because that they didn't have any more stimulus money to spend. So, I mean, it's rising trend, and people probably held on, some smart people probably held on to their stimulus money and spent it gradually, which is why you see a little bit more spending in the food and energy column, and you see that one kind of bouncing back a little bit faster than the other extracurricular spending, because people were being, kind of squeezed. They knew that they couldn't go back to work, and this money was kind of the only thing that they had to live on. So the people who really saw this as a stimulus to their personal pockets used it wisely. And I could say that those are probably the people that created the upward trends. And on the other side of the coin, the ones who took advantage of maybe those PPE loans that now people are getting in trouble for, how much of that money actually went into quote unquote stimulate this economy? We don't know because they're not breaking down those numbers and they're not talking about those things. So when you come down here to this next paragraph, it says in April, Americans after income tax slid 15.1% from the record level it hit in March. So right here, Washington Post is already kind of backtracking on what they said about Trump's economy, because during the election cycle, we heard nothing about how great the economy was doing, the growth to the middle class. We didn't hear about prices going down. We didn't hear about the record low gas prices or the record high economy. The only thing that we now are hearing about is this 15.1% slide. And why? And they're very specific. Do you notice that it says after tax income? Because after tax income was doing so well under Trump's tax cuts. And they're still trying to tell us that those tax cuts were basically for the wealthy. Let me tell you from personal experience, you can call it anecdotal or not. I have a significantly better paycheck and don't live paycheck to paycheck with the 4 years of growth to the middle class that Trump stimulated in the economy. In this economy, in Biden's economy, I'm looking at going back to the Obama crunch. But again, let's continue on. We talk about this 15.1% income slide. When did this happen? Anybody? Bueller? It happened because they shut down the economy. So they sent people home, your manufacturing jobs, your networking jobs. One of my friends their husband is in the expo business, where they do all those, shows and trade shows and boat shows and Comic-Cons and all those things. That got shut down. The movie industries, I mean, we're not even just talking about blue collar workers. We're talking about a bunch of people who got shut down due to the government's restrictive policies during COVID. So now, of course, we want to talk about the 15.1% slide in after-tax income, because it just shows you, again, how terrible Trump was and how, his policies weren't good for the economy. So next up here, they say in March, income had jumped an eye-popping 22.7% compared to February. That's after-tax income, jumped up 22.7% in March of this year, because we're comparing last year and this year. I know it's a little bit hard to follow. So after we saw the increase in April or March, March and then April kind of slid again. I apologize that March comes before April. I'm thinking of May. So is it really that hard to jump up 22% if the entire economy was shut down? And even if, let's be generous, half of the people that were sent home got put back to work? I mean, if that were the case, then I think the 22.7 is a little bit light. That's my opinion. Again, I'm not very good with math, so if I'm misunderstanding what this article is trying to say, please, by all means, correct me. But in my opinion, if you're talking about after-tax income sliding 15.1% after you shut everybody down, then there's really no excuse why you should only see a 22% increase, because now we're talking about people going back to work. Unless you want to say that people aren't going back to work because they're getting unemployment benefits to not go back to work. Is that why it only raised the 22.7%? I'm just saying. So while after-tax income slipped in April, it trended upward in the longer run as stimulus checks and unemployment benefits continued to arrive in April, but at lower levels. So again, do you see what's going on here? They're counting this money as money that goes into the economy, but realistically, if we aren't doing the jobs to produce the goods to offset the money that we're putting into the economy, what is really going to happen to the prices of the goods? Because remember, we go back to, we're not producing goods. So you could give me $100,000. You can give everybody $100,000 if there's still only 5 boxes of mac and cheese on the shelf. Only 5 of us are getting boxes of mac and cheese, guys, and the rest of us are going to eat that $100 million or $100,000 or whatever money that you have in your pocket, because the money isn't going to make the mac and cheese appear on the shelf. So continuing with the article, powered in part by this government-assisted income surge, consumer spending recovered completely from the COVID crisis in March. Guys, if it's government-assisted income and the taxes go to government, how are we paying ourselves? Does anybody else catch this? I mean, this is kind of crazy. So we're in debt. So the government's idea is to print money, to give to you, to give back to them, to pay off the debt. And we're supposed to be celebrating this because the percentage in increase and the percentage of how much wages fell after Trump, shut down the economy. Let's continue. While consumers are finally shelling out just as much per month as they did before the recession, spending in April 2021 looks very different than it did 14 months earlier before the crisis. Spending on goods, everything from private planes to window panes, aren't they cute, recovered within a month or two and has been in record territory ever since. Okay, so we're not down to 5 boxes of mac and cheese on the shelves. We have a lot of products still left here in America. Let's face it, we produce at such an excessive rate. As a matter of fact, you want a good resource to look up, to fact check that. Look at the cars, the car industry. I mean, not even just American-made cars, not that I'm sure. I don't even know if there's any of those left. But just the car industry, and not just America alone, just in general, the way that we produce, we overproduce everything. So when you're able to give people a bunch of money, you are buying things that have already been paid for. They've already stimulated the economy to the point that they can, minus collecting a tax percentage off the sale of said item. But you've already paid out for the labor, you've already paid out for the overhead, you've already paid out for the loss and everything that goes into running that business to produce said product. So you've paid for that in the past to profit off of it now, which is why there's a little bit of a lag when we talk about stopping production, which is the first time, this is the first time that we've ever done this. And this is now why, again, certain things are running out and certain things aren't running out. Why you're able to go out and buy window panes right now. Why? Because you've got a bunch of money that's been stimulated by your government sitting in your bank account. And even though, you have been able to go to work and you've been able to take care of your things, they're still giving you this money. So the window pane people, they've just reopened. They've been cleared to go back to work, and they would love to have your business. They would love to be able to pay for the things that they've already paid for. They want to collect on it, and it's time to collect on it now. So they take your money and, put it into their businesses and so on and so forth. So that's all fine and good up until now. Again, you've got all these people. The window pane company is ready to open up. They're ready to go back to work. They have the product for you, but they don't have the laborers to go to the houses. or they don't have the salesman to pitch the sales. They are missing a component. So yeah, a lot of these people, and I thought about this with the federal housing market and how it's going to play out, especially in Texas, where real estate is few and far between. You have people now who are buying houses on a site only type of system here, where they only know the site. They're going to pay for the contract. They're going to, kind of set up everything and pay a percentage to get the ball rolling. But materials and labor is hard to find. So how long are these people going to have to wait before somebody comes to build their houses? Yeah, they got approved for the loan. Yeah, they had their down payment. Yeah, the bankers are paid. The back end is paid. But it's actually getting the ball rolling to start construction. And what's going to happen if these people hit a deadline to a contract and they can't get the laborers out there to work? Here in Georgia, there's a lot of construction going on. There's a lot of different things happening in building of houses and building of real estate. And it's kind of interesting because my cousin in Pennsylvania, her husband is a construction worker, and they're telling him that, it's going to be hard to get supplies moving into the future. So it's going to be really interesting. While they're telling all these people, don't panic, everything's going to go ahead and bounce back up. Meanwhile, you're pulling the rug out from underneath the people after you've gotten them used to these stimulus checks and they have all this extra money to spend. My question is, when they go back to work and there's no more extra money to spend, what is then going to be the dip in the market? Because right now, technically, we're still stimulating. So we are still injecting our economy with this fake money that realistically doesn't have any value. So spending on services such as parking and surgeries rose 0.6%. That's that inflation that they were talking about earlier in the article, that, prices are going up 0.6%. And they remained 4.7% below its pre-pandemic level as fears of the virus remain widespread and some high-traffic brick and mortar firms struggle to regain their footing. Well, it's not necessarily that people are afraid to go into these places. Let's be real here. We've been out at Walmart. We've been out at the gas stations. We've been out everywhere we've needed to go throughout this entire pandemic. The only brick and mortar establishments that have been hurt by the pandemic restrictions are the small businesses. And a lot of people don't realize that these businesses took such a hard hit that they were just starting to come back on the up and up at the end of the last 4 years. To be crushed by the pandemic was just lights out for these people. And the ones that were struggling to kind of stay in the game, they had so much community backlash to deal with. It was mask or don't mask. And you have 50% of the community that wants masks and 50% of the community that doesn't want masks. And let's just say you're right there in the middle. So you either have people screeching at you to require masks, and then you finally do, and then the people who don't want a mask to come into your establishment don't come in, or it's vice versa, that situation. A lot of people think that this is just, divide by politics and divide and conquer. It's not divide and conquer because of political things. This is divide and conquer because it turns out that these things are detrimental to ourselves and to society, and it ends up creating negative relationships in our communities where we are battling against each other instead of working together as a community to build each other up. And the only people that are benefiting from these coronavirus lockdowns are the big corporations. And it's funny because when you talk to anybody about these numbers, especially in this article here, they will tell you, well, there's no reason why mom and pops can't be surviving. See, people are spending. But that's the problem. You guys have now taken a stranglehold on where they can spend their money. As a matter of fact, I get into this quite often with people fighting this private business mentality. And I talked about this the last time that we spoke on a serious level about, yes, I get it that it's your private business and you have entitlements to your policies and your procedures and things that go on in your store and how you run your business. But when you start taking responsibility for the public's health and you start discriminating based upon health reasons, my mind immediately goes to, where does it stop and how long before it sucks up everything in its hemisphere? There's nothing that can be left out of such a slippery slope. And I know that a lot of people think that that's a fallacy argument, but when you look at the events of the past, just this year, and it's only May, yeah, it's May. So you're talking about 5 months into the year, and we went from, being able to choose whether we go into work sick or not. We went from being able to choose what's best for our health or not. We went from being able to choose whether we want to take an injection to possibly prevent disease or not. So when you're telling me that you can discriminate against somebody because they're wearing a mask or they're not wearing a mask, or they're vaccinated or they're not vaccinated, my question is, how long before they say, you can't come in here because you're a woman, you can't come in here because you're black, you can't come in here because you're white? And let's not pretend like it's not happening. We have Lori Lightfoot talking about, as the mayor, she's not going to take any interviews from journalists of less than color, of white skin. She's only taking journalists of color for her interviews. So don't tell me that it can't happen. Don't tell me it's a fallacy or an anecdotal argument. In my opinion, I feel it's only a matter of time. So right here with this chart that we've been kind of staring at for the past couple minutes, let me get back on track here. Spending recovers, but the services slump continues. Isn't that what I've been saying, guys? So yeah, we've got all these goods that we've already pre-produced. And when we're injecting fake money into the economy, people aren't earning this money. We aren't making new products. We're just taking fake money and saying, here, spend this money, and that's going to make everything all better. You can see right here by this chart, the goods are up 16.5%. So we've got the goods on the shelves. Spending is up 1.8%. So all those goods were there. We produced a little bit more. We're not spending all that much. And then the service industry has gone down, because what is the easy, it's not easy. Let's not get it twisted, but the most likely business you're probably going to see in your neighborhoods is going to be a restaurant, a pizza shop, any place that serves food. And those are considered service industries because they provide services for the community. They cook your food for you. Bars, restaurants, things like that. So your services are now down. Movie theaters are down. Entertainment is down. I would really, I'm sure it's not that hard to find, to go and see each individual category and see how far each individual category has dropped. You could probably go to the Bureau of Statistics and look it up with no problem. So let's finish up this article. What are Americans making for dinner? They're making reservations. A different measure of inflation, consumer price index, showed that an even higher inflation figure, 4.2%. That index tends to be higher than the figure in today's release, which is the measure of inflation watched most closely by the Federal Reserve. So, basically what they're saying is that, these are the things that are going to end up going up in prices, because people are gonna, you've already seen it and you've already heard it, people are gonna want to go back to work for more money than what they went back to work for before, because they've been given all this fake money. And now that they've used that fake money to take care of their bills and their excess spending and everything else that they were able to spend on, they're going to need more money in their paychecks. And to incentivize them to go back to work what they're going to do is they're going to pay them the more money for that. So, what does this mean overall? Let's just scroll down to the end of the to the end of the article here. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, an early critic of the administration's stimulus plan, also doubled down on his inflation concerns this week and wrote that the primary risk to the U.S. economy is overheating and inflation. So you have right here the former Treasury Secretary. I'm not 100% sure. Can we do really quick before I put my foot in my mouth here? I'm going to go ahead and say that he was a part of the Trump administration, or he was probably a Trump supporter. American economist, former vice president, developer of economics, chief economist of the World Bank, and he was he was actually under President Clinton. Now, how about that? Former director of National Economic Council for President Obama. Well, color me impressed. I did not know who he was, so thank you for joining me on that little adventure there to see who he was and why he was an early critic of the stimulus plan. But I tend to agree with him, even though Washington Post seems to be, again, still just carrying weight and trying to play this down and make this a non-issue for Americans and get us on the bandwagon. The article did go on to talk about medical spending and how that was going to go up here, and why, give a couple more reasons as to why they say inflation is really happening. I think we know why it's happening, and we don't want to admit, or rather the administration doesn't want to admit that the stimulus checks were the wrong way to go, and that, ultimately at the end of the day, if we want to balance a budget, we have to be balanced in our economy. We have to input as much as we output, and there has to be a good way to do that. So, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens going into the summer, especially knowing that they really don't want us to travel. Nobody wants to let go of these restrictions. Some states are opting for these vaccine passports. I see a lot of concert venues and things going on coming into the summer. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. Again, another really interesting thing to watch is going to be Strange Bedfellas on Saturday evenings. I'm really, really excited about this show. I know that it's a little bit difficult to come up with content every single day, especially in administration, where I feel like there's no controversy because everything's sunshine and rainbows. So you have to really kind of dig and pay attention to what's going on. And even the right side news is coming up with a bunch of non-stories as far as I'm concerned. So getting into this program, it's going to be very, very interesting for me to kind of have some back and forth with the political talking points. My host, I love her to death. She's such a sweet, sweet girl. We kind of hit it off at the Patriot Picnic last year. She helped me get set up, and I really do believe that if Corona hadn't hit, we would have had a much bigger event. But I was very satisfied with even the small turnout that we had. I met, really, really great, awesome people, and we've kept in contact and been kind of bouncing things off of each other throughout this past year, that whenever I asked her to get involved, she was really excited about it. And I thought, how very interesting for me to bring on a guest who is a Puritan. She is completely opposite, and I'm not talking Catholic or Christian or, Puritan through and through. I will give her the opportunity to explain in full on our first episode. I went ahead, we did a little banter back and forth, so I put together a 1 minute clip to tease you guys as to what you can expect coming up in the future. The first show will air June 5th, and I think that I'm going to try to have it posted by 6 o'clock. I should be able to have everything edited and thrown in there. The show is going to be about an hour long. We can talk for a very, very long time. So I'm trying to cap us down to an hour to start. If you guys really like the show and you like our back and forth, we can extend it. Eventually, we can go into live shows depending on how many people tune in. Obviously, I'll give you the heads up so that you can tune in with us and you can do maybe questions if we want to do like a guest, maybe talk about bringing a guest on, or doing a three-way conversation. Any type of suggestions or anything that you guys want to see, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. I don't ask you guys a lot. I'm actually not really good with marketing myself. So don't market me, market the ideas, market the pitch, market the viewpoint. This isn't about me. This is about getting as many people educated and to look into getting themselves as educated as possible and not being spoon-fed what Washington Post hands you when it seems to go against everything that you have ever been taught in life, especially when it comes to reality and what they want you to believe is reality. But I digress. Guys, I kept it under 40 minutes today. So without further ado, I'm going to give you your teaser and I will see you guys on June 5th. Be there. $100 that I usually spend on food got me less food this week. We can't go anywhere or do anything because half the people are running around with masks on. The other half of the people are screaming like lunatics about people dying in the streets, and I have yet to see a coroner's cab on my street. So,
Right.
like, is reality not real? Am I the only one who sees what's going on here? It's
Yeah.
confusing. And if you're young, I couldn't imagine being 16, 17, going through this. My daughter's 16 this year. Like, goodness gracious, what if I was anybody else in the world? What would you be going through right now? What are some of these other kids going through right now? That's just,
Right.
said it.
And
You want
that's a normal, that would be the normal reaction. But in today's society, oh no, you shouldn't be anxious. You
yeah,
shouldn't be depressed.
yeah.
Everything hunky dory. So here's this pill.